Hello and welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode number 355. Today we're going to look at some international news that may or may not have made the headlines. And we are going to start here in Antarctica with a place you don't hear too much about, where a Chilean researcher was found guilty of rape when he took advantage of extreme and inhospitable weather conditions on an expedition with a French female researchers. Apparently, the female was resting in a tent when the horny Chilean researcher decided to join her and then rape her. He will be sentenced by a court in Chile later this year. Speaking about why the United States does not distance itself from Israel over the war in Gaza, Canadian broadcast journalist Elisa Saray stated that American politics and culture and Hollywood is largely run by Jews. Now, Ms. Saray has been placed on indefinite leave for her apparently anti-Semitic remark. Chinese journalist Zhang Jian was originally prosecuted for her reporting of the breakout of the Wuhan flu in that country back in 2020. This past Friday, she was sentenced to an additional 4 years in prison for picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Released in 2024, she saw all of 3 months of freedom before this current conviction. Finnish authorities announced that they would not remember about Trump blowing up drug runners in the Caribbean, and some people are saying that he may need congressional approval to do that. Well, that's absolutely fucking false, because they were saying that they weren't known to be drug runners. However, the Dominican Navy has picked up several kilos of drugs from that boat. So take that, leftist pieces of scum who are now protecting drug runners. All right. Finnish authorities announced that they would not investigate or seek charges against a member of their parliament for comments he made on a radio broadcast when he described immigrants to Finland as low quality and turning the country into a third world pigsty, which is actually sort of the truth when it comes to immigrants from pigsty third world countries. Finland's non-discrimination ombudsman, yes, they have such a thing, Rainier Hiltunen, recently decried government crackdowns tightening immigration rules as being unwelcoming to foreigners. He also said the comments of the member of parliament noted above beforehand were becoming the prevailing view in Finland, and something had to be done to make the immigrants from pigsty third world countries more welcomed. Police in Finland have completed their investigation into the Arctic Group, a company that thrives in the berry industry. They are asserting that the company exploited foreign workers, mainly from Thailand, in what amounted to a major human trafficking operation. Illegal foreign labor is not just an American thing. French police unions are demanding action, not words, after a string of violent acts against officers. 6 off-duty officers were recently surrounded by a gang and beaten. In a second incident, a lone officer was likewise surrounded and beaten so badly it left him disfigured. The union noted that attacks targeting police officers are on the rise in France. A public opinion poll out of Germany revealed that their number one concern was inflation and the increasing cost of goods, coming in at 52%. A close second was a fear of the country being overrun by immigrants, and that came in at 49%. Ding ding. Incidentally, fear of President Trump came in a distant 6th place. A shop owner in the town of Flensburg, Germany, near the Danish border, decided to go all 1930s and put a sign in his window that said, "No Jews allowed." No Jews allowed. All that was needed was a yellow star. The shop owner admitted he placed the sign in the window and said, "Nothing personal, it's not anti-Semitic, I just don't like you," referring to Jews. Alrighty then. Recent elections in North Rhine-Westphalia were won by the Christian Democrats, which is the ruling party in Germany. However, support for the Social Democrats crashed, and support for the opposition AfD party was the beneficiary. However, despite their rise in popularity, officials for the AfD were hoping for a better showing. However, in a mayoral election in some German town, a member of the AfD party, shown here, Joachim Paul, was banned from running. Local officials used a report from the German intelligence service, which characterized the AfD party as extremists for their views on immigration. Although leading in the polls up to the election, 3 courts upheld his removal from the ballot. As a result, there was record low turnout in the city, with 29% casting votes, in a city that boasts an average of 58% turnout. In Great Britain, the Monmouthshire County Council recently gave the green light to a 30-year lease to use a historic library, currently vacant, to a Muslim group who will convert the library into a mosque. However, residents and some local officials are now fighting back legally to have the decision overturned and finding another use for the building. Proponents of the lease, incidentally, also have a problem with a school being named after King Henry VIII. And gee, what can go wrong here? A group of 34 students from Gaza were evacuated to Great Britain, where they will study with full scholarships and help from the government. All of the students are allegedly in the medical field, which in Gaza means using hospitals and clinics as bases for terrorists. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer went all Macron and recently announced that Great Britain would recognize a Palestinian state. Now comes word that Mahmoud Abbas, head of the Palestinian Authority, will demand billions upon billions in reparations for the land relinquished in that area after World War II. So they take that, Starmer. There's your thanks from a bunch of terrorist scum. But keep on virtue signaling, Incidentally, the move by Great Britain is largely symbolic and has no effect. It is now reported that the British Parking Association has roughly 82,000 employees who have raked in over 2.3 billion British pounds in fees and fines on the roads and for parking infractions. To put this in perspective, Great Britain has only 73,000 full-time members of their military. That's British priority for you. A former British military officer said that many Afghan refugees to Great Britain use staged torture videos to gain asylum in that country. Once granted asylum, they then push to have their families admitted into the country. The whistleblower said the only fear they had was not from the Taliban torturing them, but from rampant unemployment. Recent reports are that there are another 800 migrants ready to cross the English Channel from France to Great Britain. Recently, a single boat carrying 166 migrants were processed at a detention center. France and Great Britain signed a one-in, one-out agreement, but to date, thousands have entered Great Britain and only 2 have been deported back to France. So much for that one-in, one-out thing. Fort Blockhouse in Hampshire, England dates back to 1431 and is Britain's oldest sea fort and was once home to the Navy's submarine fleet. Now, officials are seriously considering whether to use the fort to house recent migrants from pigsty third world countries that seem to be overrunning Great Britain. Given the shortage of housing in the country, officials are looking at military bases and even warehouses to place the migrants. A group of tourists on a Greek island recently managed to push a boatload of illegal migrants from North Africa back into the ocean as it attempted to come ashore. Greece is on the front line of the migrant boat crossings, now mainly from Libya, a country royally fucked up by Hillary Clinton and company, by the way. Okay, so Holland is the most densely populated country in Europe, and there is a housing shortage. People in their 20s likely live with their parents, or if you're in your 20s or 30s, they share an apartment with 3 other people. And they have a social housing program. And the cats are fighting. But for a Dutch citizen to access it, it takes an average of 12 years. However, If you're a recent foreign refugee or immigrant to Holland from some pigsty third world country, it takes on average 14 weeks. There is now an effort to right this obvious wrong. And come on, women of Hong Kong, start fucking and having babies. The birth rate has dropped to 0.73, which ranks the second lowest in the world after South Korea. Early statistics from this year indicate that the number of babies born in Hong Kong may set a record for a new low, most recently attained in 2022. Many women are blaming the rising costs for not having children. Hungarian President Viktor Orban is sounding the alarm about the opposition party in upcoming national elections, saying that if they should prevail, the TISA party will turn Hungary into a haven for immigrants from pigsty third world countries. And he's using Germany as an example of what could go wrong. Orban has repeatedly butted heads with the global elitists in Brussels and Western Europe over immigration. As we'll see, if it ain't pro-Palestinian people in Italy, it's Roma gangs, better known as gypsies. An 8-year-old Italian boy was left disfigured when he was attacked by 3 gypsy youths at his own birthday party in a park in a suburb of Rome. The attackers were as young as 7 and as old as 11. And unfortunately, because of their age, under Italian law, they cannot be prosecuted. The victim will have to undergo reconstructive surgery on his face after he was attacked with iron bars. Professor Rino Casella at the University of Pisa in Italy was recently physically attacked in his classroom by pro-Palestinian protesters. The university recently cut ties with Israel, and the professor was a vocal opponent of that action. 2 students who tried to intervene were also hurt in the melee. For the record, Professor Casella is not Jewish. Massive pro-Palestinian protests rocked Italy, described as a day of premeditated guerrilla warfare by officials. The demonstrations soon descended into riots that left over 60 police officers injured, with 23 requiring hospitalization. Prime Minister Meloni blames Antifa and other leftist groups for the violence. Italy, along with Germany, so far have refused to recognize a Palestinian state. As tensions in the Pacific increase, Japan announced that the U.S. Army's mid-range Typhoon missile system has been deployed at a U.S. base in that country. Recently, the U.S. and Japanese forces held joint exercises designed to thwart Chinese aggression against Japan. Previously, the United States deployed the missile system to the Philippines, an action that drew criticism from both China and Russia. Reports out of Kenya indicate that about over $500 million in pension and health insurance funds have been lost through government fraud and corruption. Apparently, government officials stole from the pension and health funds using non-existent citizens and double payments. Experts estimate that about 15,000 people benefited from the fraud, so go figure. Corruption and fraud in an African country. Who would have thought that? A recent study out of Lithuania indicates that conservatism is not always for the older crowd. That study showed that those born during the 1990s after Soviet domination are quite conservative in their outlooks and prefer tradition over more leftist outlooks. They're not that progressive. And so there may be hope for Europe after all. A small explosion rocked Oslo, the capital of Norway, recently, and it's believed to be caused by a hand grenade. Norwegian officials believe it was thrown in a turf war between rival criminal gangs. Identical incidents have been reported in neighboring Sweden, where criminal gangs have resorted to using hand grenades against one another. Nobody was injured in the explosion, and police have detained one suspect. And finally, after 2 weeks, Poland announced that they have reopened their borders with neighboring Belarus. The border was closed as the armies of Russia and Belarus participated in a large military exercise near the Polish border. The closure cut off a vital railway link between the European Union and China, which obviously had a few noses out of joint in Brussels. And that's it for today. Thanks, have a great day, and a more pleasant tomorrow.